All right, we are on the record for the Montessori Peaks Academy Board of Directors General Meeting Tuesday, August 19, 2020 at 6:32 p.m. Ms. Lisa, could you do a roll call?
I will. We have Brittany Horseman, Brandon Smith, Jack Llewellyn, Beth McDonald, Lisa Myers, Christina Grant, Robin Morrissey, and Carmen Center are present. That's a quorum. Becky Springstead is absent, but I'm hoping she'll join here any minute.
Okay, as is our tradition with Zoom meetings, we will take note of and reflect upon the mission statement, but we will not all read it. Having duly reflected, are there any community comments? I know I've received a few kind of generalized comments, but nothing that I would consider meeting specific. Hearing none, we will move efficiently on to the principal's report. Brian.
All right, hi everyone. I'll try to keep this short. Lots to cover. First of all, I want to say, hey, the staff is back. So we've been together for almost a week now, and things are going great. Other than the jam up at the health check station the first day, we got past that. But no, we're back. We don't meet as a whole staff. We meet in teams. We keep our group numbers down. We've all been practicing wearing masks. It's really been going well. Tons to do, obviously, and we're making it up every day as we go. So we'll kind of address some of the changes that we have to do on the fly, things that are kind of staying static. But there's some school districts that are staying par with their plan. So Littleton's going to go live on Monday. Douglas County, seems like Cherry Creek, all the districts that are going to be first are still going first at this point. I think we're in a good spot that with the way things are going, we need those extra 2 weeks to get ready for having students in the building. We still have hallways full of stuff. We have our storage containers finally here, but not having huge maintenance departments, things like that, a lot of district resources, we have to do most of it in-house. That was a good call. It really was to give us the time to flush out the problems that are unique to Montessori. We spend a lot of time in classrooms talking about how to make these learning environments still Montessori but safe. So it's good to have the time. We'll be ready for the remote start on the 24th. We've had some staffing changes that we just have to roll with what we're being dealt with. Todd thought it was better to go remote for various reasons. So he's going to be the remote teacher for upper. He will work out of the home, but he'll have a full class, basically 20 some kids. Karen Bushman's moved over to his room, and she's gonna have a little bit lower class size because she's not gonna have an assistant. We don't have the money. Once we pushed one person to remote, Miss Tasha's moving over to Natalie's class to support her. So we have to make adjustments. We were able to hire Angie back as the lower elementary remote teacher. We're going to use CRF funds, coronavirus relief funds, for that. We did get the clear, the go ahead. Took many a phone calls and meetings to finally flush that one out. But then in the last couple of days, starting at the end of last week, we had a lot of momentum from parents to switch a lot of kinders over to remote. So with that, if we didn't make some accommodations for that, those would be families that would be leaving probably. So we had to figure out how to do that in-house. And the call was to Jill's going to go that direction. She's going to be the remote teacher. We're able to take any of her kiddos. She's called all the parents, and we kind of did all that behind the scenes before we made a public announcement. Just because, she's been here. lot of people wanted her, but was also, they're going to be delighted to have her for a remote option. So she's going to take that on, move all the other kiddos to the other 5 classes. We're still going to try to run our numbers up to 60 kinder. Preschool's still lagging behind. I'll get to the enrollment here in a little bit. But there's some things to talk about when we get to that section. We hired Emily Bushman as the assistant in Jennifer's class. So we're full staff now. We don't have any other needs to fill besides substitute teachers. That's going to be the top going forward of how to staff when we need staff to be home and quarantined, or with their kids who might be quarantined from another school. It's going to get complicated, and we're going to need a pool of people to really call on. So it's going to get a little tricky there. Kind of moving down the list, all the facility projects are coming along. We did get a bid from some companies on updating what a lot of the Jeffco, as well as many other school districts, are doing is they're going to their HVAC system of what's called a needlepoint bipolar air ionization system. So it's an add-on to your current HVA units, and it just, I don't have the technical knowledge, but basically it clusters particles together and it cleans the air, and it has a high effective rate. So we had a bid on that. We can use CRF funds. We found that out as of yesterday. We have to follow certain protocols on it, but I think we can cover a pretty substantial bill with the CRF funds to get that work in progress. So we're excited that we figured out how to use about 190,000 of those CRF dollars to get the building up and running. We do have a little pocket of money that we haven't dog-eared yet, just because we're waiting and seeing what surprises we might have that would fit that money. And Amy and I have until November, December-ish to make the final calls on those funds. So we're moving along. It takes a lot of work to kind of adjust all this on the fly. Daniel, Grace, Shannon, they're doing great at just moving the building along. We got to get all the signage up. We're trying to figure out ventilation in rooms. We got windows in the office. We have a medical wellness room back here. We got 2 clinics basically. So there's just a lot going on. Teachers have really cleaned out their rooms in order to get the most easy, open environment that they can, that we can clean, social distance. Those 2 40-foot storage containers, I think we're going to fill them. So we'll see. Let's talk enrollment. It's just up and down. We're sitting right now at 347.5, so that puts us what's a 22.5 under the 370. And the gaps that we're seeing is we're down at preschool, especially in the 3-year-olds. Kinders, we're right there. We're at 59 out of 60 at this point. 4-year-olds, we're at 30 out of 36. Of course, we're low at 6th grade. The rest of the groups are kind of holding on. We're still low in lower L across the board. 10, roughly 10, 8 at each level. Homeschool's been going back down. We thought that number would be going back up. So we'll see how things start to stabilize here in the next couple of weeks. It's just a daily count that we look at. But with that in mind, we've had lots of requests for remote at primary. We have 12 that are kinders that want remote. We went from 1 2 weeks ago to 12. So that's why we had to make the shift with Miss Jill. Again, the team figured this out, but now the question on the table is we got families that want remote for preschoolers. Well, that doesn't fit any kind of tuition schedule or model that we've ever had. So that is something up for consideration here. We have 6 students on the wait list from preschool that want to go under the remote plan. So let me put up, can I share my screen here? Let me see. Do I have, yeah, here we go. So let me pull up what Miss Jill and I have created. There we go. So right now we have a draft of what distance learning looks like at primary. So Miss Jill's put most of this together based on conversations, based on the team discussions, based on what we know that would be best practice for that primary. We'll expand on it as we move along. But really what it comes down to, and something I want to bring up with the board, is you can only have, remote sounds great, but again, there's a capacity. So like Mr. Todd, who's doing remote, Angie, who's doing remote, you can't just throw 50 kids at one person and expect a quality program. And for us to count every one of those students as a full-time FTE. So with the educational process that Attorney Bill sent Brittany that went through the board and that kind of thing, we have to run a highly structured day in the remote world in order to count FTE. So we do have to have some reasonable cap on these remote programs. And so Ms. Jill and I talked, she could probably do 25 max students. Obviously we'd like to fill more kinders than preschoolers, just because A, they're older, B, that's a different funding source. But I think it might be good practice, and I'm just suggesting that for the board to think this of maybe creating a small tuition for those families that have older siblings that are staying remote, and they also have a preschooler and they're going to stay remote. We just can't simply give that service away for free. So we were kind of talking, looking at this tuition schedules that we've already pushed out to parents. I just put on this document, and probably see it down here, something to think about. Maybe we charge $200 a month for preschoolers for 9 months, that for families that want this service from Miss Jill.
Hey Brian, I can't. It's kind of like just a blank screen.
Yeah, your screen share went wonky.
Okay, let me stop the share. Try it again. There we go. Can you see it any better? Okay.
Much better, thank you.
Does it turn green? Let me expand it here a little bit too. It'll let me. Okay. Well, it's not. Part of the discussion is, if Jill can only handle 25, we in the restart plan, if you notice, said families can return to in-person learning if there's room still in the classroom for a safe, socially distanced classroom at certain intervals. Families can jump out to remote learning at any time, K up, right? But to come back in has to be at certain intervals. Why? Because we want to maintain low numbers, as low as we can in the room, so that every cohort has the healthiest environment possible. And so we have to evaluate. And so these are the dates I put out. I don't know if we need to vote on that, but this is pretty consistent with other Montessori schools as well as some other district schools that we kind of look at in October, January, April, jump back into in-person learning. Well, the same would apply to preschool. If you want to pay for remote preschool, a parent can't just jump back in when they want to. There has to be space available, and it's even much harder, as you know, with the 10-to-1 ratios. So we could run our numbers and enroll as many kiddos in the 5 classes that we have, max out in online, and actually have more kids than we would normally have with the 120 of the 6. The challenge will be who wants to be back in and who's leaving and all that. So that's where we're at in primary. We're adjusting to the needs of the families to keep them MPA families. And so that's just something that's happened behind the scenes in a relatively short amount of time in order to keep 15, 20 of our families, because if you do the math, that's a lot of money that walks away if we can't provide the service. So that's what we're doing as a staff, is we're dedicated to providing a service to in-person and remote to the families that want it. And it's still a challenge. We're still only at 347 on the enrollment. With that said, obviously it impacts the budget. So some of the stuff, Brittany, you guys are going to talk about later. I think that's going to trickle up. It just has to. I think we'll get more confidence as we go. When I say confidence, that's confidence of, hey, look, we can keep the school open. That gives parents confidence. Again, we have the month of September to shake it out. October count is 11 days this year. It bridges from the last week of September, cross October 1st into the first week of October. So those dates have just been released. Veronica will give more information as well as myself. But it is true on October count this year. So that's why on my principal's report, we just want to talk about that possible educational, let me go grab it here. The educational process resolution. And that basically says that we have a quality program remotely that has the same number of instructional hours or equivalent process in the remote world. Just winging it doesn't count like we did back from March through May. So the state's very clear on that right now, and we need to build a way more in-depth remote program. So that's why in a lot of the handbooks that we've created at levels or with teachers, and I'll just show you, this is one class. You can just kind of see the level of detail that we're at with what a remote situation and weekly schedule looks like. It'll get tweaked as we go. But I've asked every team and almost every teacher to have a COVID handbook, playbook, so to speak, that addresses the changes that we're facing this year and what it means to parents, what it means to students, things like that. Let's see here. One other thing, homeschool had to start on the 21st. They're going to do their first remote session on the 21st. That is outside of the calendar that we approved back in July, because we said school would start on the 24th. Well, in order to meet the number of days required for homeschool, they got to launch this Friday. So if we need to have a vote or amend that, or just give me advice on that, but that's just something that when we did the math, we had to make that correction. The homeschool program's got it adjusted. Parents are good. They're going to roll with it and start on Friday remotely. Also at the bottom down here, let me see if I can expand this here. Future thinking. There we go. I hope you saw the restart plan. Yeah. Oh, did it stop again?
I think so.
Let me try it
You did
again.
that or I did.
No, I just think our service has been a little glitchy here in the school. Oh, by the way, we got to get some Wi-Fi upgrades. So we got Gregory going to upgrade some of our systems. We also had some power outages, kind of messed some things up. So again, part of those upgrades will come through the CRF funds as well. So the restart plan, tell you what, we sent that out and my email went, maybe not Veronica's, but mine went way down because it started answering a lot of questions that parents had. Amy and I listened to a charter school that has started already, 900 student charter school over in Grand Junction called Caprock. And again, it's Western Colorado. That's the city I raised my kids in. I know it well, worked in that district for 14 years. I thought any school that would have a problem with mass or any district, It would be that school. That principal said after the first day, every kid wears a mask. The parents have learned to trust the teachers on how to use a mask. And after up and running for a week, masks are a non-issue. And that's the message I really want to send to our parents tomorrow night, that we're going to figure it out. The teachers are highly skilled, but it's for the safety and well-being of everyone. If we want to keep schools open, there's certain things that we have to do. And so I was highly encouraged that another school is being that successful and that large of a school in another part of the state. So that was great. So anything at this point, I don't know if we're going to update the restart plan this week. There are maybe some documents, some things that we might push out in a newsletter, but as far as major rewrites, I'm not seeing a ton right now, but I'll wait till after the town hall. And then all those questions that parents bring had really shaped that document. I looked at a lot of those questions and tried to put information in the restart plan that answered those questions. So kind of moving forward, we're going to do a Q&A kind of sheet, and then reference it back to the restart. If there's something missing in our restart plan, we'll write an addendum, and then we'll start pushing out and showing the question and answer portion back to parents. So that'll help a lot. By the way, who's going to speak tomorrow night? I got about 3 staff members that are going to join. We got Children's Hospital jumping in. Is that you, Brittany? You're going to talk?
I could be there for sure.
So Jack, okay. All right, I'll send out the link.
Assuming I'm not too loopy on pain pills, but otherwise I'll be fine.
I have it on my calendar. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us are going to attend anyway as parents. So,
okay.
Whatever, Jack, if you need a backup or whoever I'm happy to help.
All right, Jack. I'll send Jack the link and he can pass it around.
And obviously, I'll be there.
Right. We had children's talk to the staff today for about an hour. So we had Kelly Brown. She's our RN that works with Christine. And great information. We really kind of dug into really what's going to run our world are these flow charts. Trying to navigate what, a friend, my son's best friend cousin had COVID. Where's that fit into, the flow chart? And so that's going to be a lot of our job for the first month, of really trying to figure out who needs to stay home, who's in, so it's gonna, so I know the staff, I don't know if they left from the Zoom any more or less confused, but I think it's just something that once we start working in that environment, it'll come pretty clear pretty quickly who needs to stay home. We have to distinguish between major and minor symptoms. And so I feel between the state, Jeffco County Health, and then Children's having all these entities with their documents and our channels of communication, I think we'll figure it out pretty fast. Couple of things coming up that you need to know about. We got the CDE annual finance seminar. That's a live link, so you can click on that link in the principal's report that Jack sent you. And then also there's the CCSP grant, and basically it's a charter school expansion grant. So I think they run, I don't know if they run a second loop of this next year. But I gave the dates there. There's a training on it coming up. If we're interested as a school, or we just want to go to the training just to get information for future reference, I think that I highly encourage students to move forward to go through that training with me on the 27th. So we're just aware of the requirements of this money and when it applies to us. And then obviously if we wanted to apply, there's the application date of October 15th. So there you go. That is it in a nutshell. There's way more going on than what I can tell you in the time I have, but I just thought I'd take a few minutes, field some questions. Sweet.
I've I've got a couple, Brian.
Going home.
Just at the bell. One is regarding this kind of challenge you brought up about the parents electing to go remote and then wanting to switch to in-person or vice versa, in-person and then wanting to jump to remote at those kind of quarter or dates that you've set. Is that going to be, so I'm assuming we have some families that decided to homeschool, that were enrolled and then decided to, instead of doing remote, to homeschool. Is there an opportunity for those parents to come back if they, let's say in October, things are running really well and it's looking good and there's not major concerns from that family anymore? Are they able to come back?
Like in the MPA homeschool program?
Or, no, in MPA, like enroll, not if they
Right.
they took their kids out to homeschool them and travel for 6 months, do their thing, and they decided, well, I feel like it's safe now that I've seen it start up, and they want to come back. Is that a possibility? We won't get funding.
Well, I think we have to review it case by case. If they're wanting a specific teacher and that teacher's full, we are maxed out. We think that's as many as we can put in that room safely. Then they have to pick another teacher. So I think we can accommodate that. Obviously, we don't want to turn families away that want to be with us. Obviously, we would want the funding, but I think we also have to build for the future. So I just want to. Veronica will be very careful about that. Obviously, students on IEPs. Obviously, if they're not with us and they're in the homeschool program, they're not on an IEP anymore. But if a family's remote and their kiddo's on an IEP, they actually have a lot more flexibility of coming back in and out based on their IEP. So there are exceptions to the rule, so to speak. But I think just in the spirit of what we do at MPA, we're just going to look at every family's situation and make the best decision at the time.
And then if there's a decision about maxing the remote learning and maxing the kindergarten, preschool in-person, which you said would actually increase our capacity from the normal in-person classrooms.
We could. I just want you to be aware it creates problems of people trying to get back into the program then, because we might be full. So.
Right, and putting that aside, I know one parent had raised an issue about what do you do in the fall? Do you do some kind of new lottery or whatever? And they are kind of asking those questions about, if they're a preschooler or whatever, and they choose to go, a remote is offered, or in their remote, or they're in person, but now we've maxed, and then next year, let's say everyone's back in person, there is no remote. That's going to create a wait list for people that were already students of MPA. So I know we don't have an answer for next year already, and we're just thinking about, but just a parent raised that. And so I didn't know if maybe that could be something percolating in the back of everyone's mind.
Mm-hmm. That's a possibility. What we don't know is attrition. How many families might leave for other reasons, could be financial reasons, moving, whatever. So you just never know what spots may open up that alleviate that problem just by normal school withdrawals. So.
About the HVAC, is that something, I know you said other districts are doing it. I kind of looped in John from DCS on that because I was concerned about spending money on an HVAC system, something that could be quite pricey when, it might be something that people are rushing to do because there's not really a lot of evidence behind it, or we don't have any proof that it makes it better in any way, shape, or form. And
right.
So
Amy did some checking on that with some other people that we know that are HVAC, and they said, yeah, that's a huge thing that's going on in almost every school district here in the Denver area. Anything that seems like that would help the air quality in the school environment, districts are putting the money in that because that's what's going to close us down. If we can't keep the air moving in the rooms, and we can't keep mass practice tight. Anything that we can do to help all the other mitigation factors, it seems like people are willing, and Jeffco's really toting about it, that they have upgraded a good portion of their HVAC systems already.
And Brittany, I understand the science behind that, and I'm convinced that it certainly won't hurt, and it has a real chance of helping, especially given how fragile the sheath is on the virus.
So, for example, we have this bid here has 12 units that we would upgrade for $28,000. Now, the grant won't cover maintenance that should be done by the school anyway, but it will cover each one of those 12 units to be upgraded with this type of technology. So if we have the funds and it fits the criteria, and as Brandon said, it can't hurt. It's again something that we can reassure the staff and parents are. We're taking every measure we can for the classroom environment. So I'm good with it. It took a lot of research and some double checking, but it seems to be something that might help our situation.
Thanks.
Sure.
I have a quick question, and I know we need to keep moving, but on this preschool remote proposal option,
Right.
with I've talked to a couple parents who would be willing to pay a monthly tuition just to hold their spot. They may not feel comfortable sending their kid just yet. They would kind of want to wait and see because their child is 3 and they just kind of want to see. But they understand the enrollment process. They understand that pulling them out, they have to re-enroll. So they really want to hold this spot, and they'd be willing to pay their tuition to hold it. And in my mind, that makes sense. But I just wondered if we might consider that, you know, in addition to this remote option. Maybe then they can come back in at their convenience if they're paying to hold their spot. I don't know, just another idea on this preschool front and how to accommodate families. And
Well, I'm not expecting a vote tonight, but we are going to have answers for parents pretty soon.
Right.
Definitely, it'll be asked tomorrow night at the town hall. But it doesn't mean we have to jump right now. But it is something out there that if a family doesn't get that, are they going to leave us? Things like that. So I'm not trying to build it to appease parents. I'm trying to give as many options as we can that helps parents and MPA at the same time.
Right. Like maybe, yeah, you can pay your full tuition and jump back in when you feel comfortable because your spot is there in theory, right?
Right.
And we're getting your full tuition. Or you can choose this remote option, get some support, and only jump back in at our designated times if there's room.
Right.
And that seems like giving some good options to parents.
Right. Right. And that's something I don't have on there. So that's a nice idea, Lisa.
Okay. Just been brewing in my mind as a fellow preschool parent.
All right, that's what I got.
I have one little quick one, if that's okay. Sorry. Just want to make sure that the vibe I'm getting is that all students will be required to wear masks.
They're required to bring a mask. So like the littlest, those again are 3 and 4 or 5-year-olds. Those teachers will help them understand that. It's a mandatory thing. It's what's being published by every school district is kids bring masks. Up to the school to figure out how to help students. The basic rule of thumb is when you're tight and you're moving, put the mask up. You're sitting in your spot doing your work, the mask can be down. You're out at recess, mask is off. You're at TV, mask is off. It's really very basic. Yes, I understand some of the sensitivity issues. We'll cross that path with parents and their physician's recommendation. But if we don't toe a line on this and we get a sick staff, we're going to wind up closing down. So we gotta figure out the balance here. because what's want to run the school is a healthy staff. You can't keep the doors open otherwise.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Bryan? So just looking at stuff, do we want to take a vote on the homeschool or the educational process resolution? Do you need that, Brian? Is that something we want to do, or how do people feel about that?
That's up to the board. Basically, Bill sent the template, and it's just, I sent that in that packet, and we can just adopt that if we want, or we can circle back at another meeting and I can do more of a description if people need more information.
Any thoughts?
I'm good with it as it is. I think general is fine.
Yeah, I agree. Any contrary thoughts? Hearing none, would somebody make a resolution or a motion, please?
I move to adopt the educational resolution. I don't know if I'm the only one that can make a motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right.
Brittany Horseman. Sorry. Was that a yes? Sorry. Okay. All right.
Sorry, yes, I muted.
All good. Brandon Smith.
Yes.
Jack Llewellyn.
Yes.
Beth McDonald.
Yes.
Lisa Myers. Yes. Christina Grant.
Yes.
Robin Morrissey. Carmen Center.
Yes.
And Becky Springston.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
On the homeschool, starting a day early, unless somebody really thinks we need a motion, I think we just kind of say that's part of the ebb and flow and basically fits within the calendar that we had established, and I don't really think we need a motion for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one thing that I put the back to school discussion, most of which Brian has covered, but the one thing I wanted to try and cover here or to talk about and possibly vote on, and this comes from a whole variety of discussions in our officers meeting, some discussions with Brian separately, with parents, etc. The thing that everybody wants, and not just with respect to MPA, but I think overall, is just some certainty. And this idea, this concern that we're going to go remote for 2 weeks, back to school for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden go back to remote, has a lot of people concerned for all the right and obvious reasons. Speaking for myself, I think that we would be in a much better position to tell our community that once we go back in person, we are going back in person for as long as we can, which basically means as long as CDE doesn't shut us down, and as long as we have staff that can, assuming we don't have a breakout or whatever. But if for some reason, Jeffco decides to go back remote, and we all know a lot of that had to do with staffing, and maybe they've got that worked out after the announcement yesterday. I don't know. But I think if we could just say it's going to be our policy, subject to, contingencies that we can't anticipate or can't deal with, such as CDE, that once we go back in person, it is our intent to stay in person. And I think that would give the community some certainty and and it might help on the enrollment a little bit of some people being concerned about whether they can get jerked back and forth. So anyways, I wanted to raise that and open it up to discussion and kind of go from there.
I have just one question about that. Aren't we kind of bound to do what Jeffco decides to do based on the liability insurance?
No.
No.
Actually, yeah, and I this, Jack, can I?
Please.
speak to
I was
that?
going to go there anyway. Yes.
Okay. So after our strategic retreat, where that did come up as an issue, we went back to look at what the district had actually said in their communications, and it turns out that the communication was from a person in the risk management department, which hadn't discussed with Tom McMillan and maybe some of the other people that have some input on that. So first of all, back in the spring, we amended our charter contract, which specifically says we don't not have to follow Jeffco. We can do what is best for our school, and that might not be what Jeffco is doing. So the Jeffco offered us that contract to amend our charter, and we signed that. So then the risk management, what the risk management said actually was that if your school cannot meet the health guidelines of the CDE and that Jeffco is following, masks and everything that Brian has already put into place, there is a risk that the district could first have a conversation with us about, hey, would you please align yourself with what we think is the best health requirements to keep everybody safe. And they ask us and encourage us to align with them, not on a school schedule, but just on our health guidelines, our safety regulations. And then if we didn't do that and we said, no, we're not having anybody wear masks, we're not doing social distancing, we're not doing cohorts, we're just whatever, we're ignoring it or something, they would then probably shut us down, or we wouldn't be covered under their insurance policy. We would be operating outside of the guidelines of what had been agreed to. But other than that, we would be covered by their insurance policy. We wouldn't have any risk in that sense. So it's different than what originally we thought was the case back when we had our strategic plan.
I originally
Comments, thoughts, considerations? Sorry, Lisa.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna share. I originally felt pretty strongly that we should align with Jeffco, given this is uncharted territory. But I also feel like an immense amount of planning and effort has gone into our own personal restart program, an immense. And hats off to the staff who are making that happen. And that provides a lot more comfort for just me, both as a board member and a parent. So.
And can I share? I got an email today, this afternoon, and was expressly asked not to identify the sender, but the sentiment was that staff and administration have worked very, very hard to make this a safe place, and that staff is very, very, very committed to in-person teaching, and they would appreciate knowing that we are supportive of that. And so I think my initial little introduction there, I had failed to kind of account for that as well. So again, speaking just for myself, I would like to be able to say as a board for tomorrow night, Brian can lay that out however he wants that. But I think that, that requires some type of consensus on the board, and I don't want to, overstep. So, what are people thinking? Do we want to take a vote on something like that? Do we want to talk about it more?
I would just like to interject for a second from the primary teacher perspective and getting the beat on staff. I think Lisa, that was very well said. I think that's exactly what the staff is feeling. And Jack, to reiterate on your point, I think we are there. We are ready to reopen in person, and they have come to me to really communicate that to us, and we want to be there for our students. So I just wanted to communicate that now.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think, Jack, one thing that came up during our discussions as well, is that I don't think that if we made this decision or this proclamation or policy, whatever you want to call it, I think it's important to recognize that we're not saying what is right for any individual family, and I know that's not what we're saying, but
Right.
just to reiterate the importance of, this is just saying the school is here for your family, whatever you choose, and that the staff and the school is dedicated and they're putting themselves on the line to ensure that they're here. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, you don't have to. There's a remote option.
And we've gone to great lengths to provide that remote option as well.
Exactly. So, I mean, extraordinary efforts on both fronts to make sure that our families can choose what they feel safe doing. But to commit that we're not going to just switch to all one unless we're required to do it for health and safety reasons.
Right.
Well, and as a principal, I feel pretty confident that the staff really thought about the in-person implications and they made a choice. The staff that had reservations or needed to be away from the campus, we were able to accommodate and use their talents to make this happen. So with that being said, I mean, every day that we work together as a staff, the more we are ready and wanting to get back into the business of teaching and learning in both environments, remote and in person. So it's just, you can just feel the momentum, as Robin is saying, that we want to get this year started, because it just seems like it's just lingering on. But every day that goes by, I think we're more committed than ever, because it starts to feel like we can do this.
And again, not to keep beating on the horse, I just think a proclamation or, a statement from the board that this is our policy going forward gives Brian and the staff and the community a sense of security that they, might not otherwise have.
So to be clear, exactly what the proclamation would state is that the board supports remaining open for in-person learning in spite of any decisions that Jeffco may make, unless it's based on some sort of health and safety risk.
Correct.
Okay, one quick question is, are we assuming then that Jeffco might make that decision based on something else, like teacher union? Is that what? Okay, got it.
Right, that's part of it. If again, we've seen schools in different areas having to shut down because teachers didn't show up. So if that happens in Jeffco, or for that matter, if they get an outbreak at one high school and decide that they're going to shut it down and we've had nothing,
right?
And we say, you know what, we're doing fine. We just want to go. Obviously, if we have an outbreak that requires something, that's a different story. And then obviously, if the state comes in and shuts everybody down, then there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to completely understand what was going on. Thank you.
I also think I've been watching state data, our state data very closely, which is looking really encouraging these past couple of weeks, like really encouraging. And then I'm watching very keenly Littleton Public, Cherry Creek, Denver, or Douglas County, going for it in person. So I drove past Littleton Academy today, which I think is a Littleton Public charter, and the whole school was coming out all in masks, all in their uniform, and so today must have been an in-person day. And I thought, wow, that's really encouraging that it's not like Montessori Peaks is just blazing their own trail in the state of Colorado.
Yeah, Classical had all their kids out this morning too once I was driving by. So.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is it's encouraging to see the new normal. But I think Brittany's right. We're not saying you have to come back in person. I think that that's very clear. We're saying we're going to continue to provide this in-person option for those families that choose it because they feel that's what's best for their family and their kiddos.
Right. Would you like to make a motion, Lisa?
Hang on, Beth had
Not only-
such a good resolution. Hang on.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Anymore.
I got it. I would
Okay.
like to move that the board pass a resolution that, in accord with our mission statement of providing education based on the educational philosophy of Maria Montessori, and recognizing that in-person education was Maria Montessori's style, we strive to maintain in-person education independent of what the rest of the district does.
Second.
Okay, all right. Brittany Horseman. Is that a yes? Sorry, you're muted.
No, I agree with what Brandon said. I'm just trying to think of whether we want to,
Do you want a comma?
we want to say, so it's clear to our families, unless there is a health or safety concern.
Agreed.
And, you know, we are required to, for state purposes, to shut down or something. Something referencing health and safety, I would,
In accord with health and safety.
all right, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes. Second, and yes, I agree.
Okay, sorry. Hang on.
We can buzz with it, Lisa.
Thank God. Okay. All right. With that amended movement, roll call. Brittany Horseman.
Yes.
Brandon Smith.
Yes.
Jack Llewellyn.
Yes.
Beth McDonald.
Yes.
Lisa Myers. Yes. Christina Grant.
Yes. Yes.
Robin Morrissey.
Yes.
Carmen Center.
Yes.
And Becky Springstead.
Yes.
That motion passes.
All right. Then let's move on to MTA North. Did you have something, Lisa? Oh, okay.
Sorry, we're good.
Talk about a few things there. John is on the phone or on Zoom, so we'd like to get him involved. I asked him to come for two reasons, and then Brittany may have additional ones. I just wanted him to kind of give us an overview of kind of where we're at. But then also we have something we need to discuss with respect to the zoning and the zoning process, and wanted him to be able to talk about that as well. So that's kind of what he the reason for asking him to come. And are you on?
I'm on.
There. Hi. Welcome.
Hello there.
So you heard that introduction. If you want to give us a kind of a down and dirty Reader's Digest condensed version of where we're at as far as the planning and process stuff, and then if you want to give your view on kind of where we're at with respect to the zoning and the issues we've discussed.
Absolutely. I'll start with the zoning part. I think that's kind of sounds like it's more an actionable item for the board, and that is as we've sort of pieced together the elements of schedule and precedence of checklist items to ultimately arrive at a closing, knowing that of course it's all subject to change, but as of now there's a scheduled close date that I think is September 8th or 9th.
August 28th.
Say again?
August 28th for the.
August 28th for the property, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And because that property becomes collateral against the loan, then the loan closing is scheduled to follow on, I think, September 8th or 9th. And we have been working to resolve any of the real estate related items, which right now, really the only outstanding one for closing is completion of the property survey. And that'll be done on the 2nd of September. So I think all of the kind of prerequisite things that we're responsible for are lined up to be done in time to allow that closing to take place. And the only key there is that the purchase of the property has to happen first. So Jack's been, as you know, leading point on a somewhat tiresome conversation at times with Jefferson County on zoning and change of use, which converting the use from a church and early childhood education to, in essence, public school requires us to go through the planning process with the county and get that approved. It is one of those things that sometimes can be a little troublesome because you have a fair amount of autonomy, as you know, as a charter school, and they try to flex the muscles that they flex with everybody else. And sometimes, we have to just tell them, simmer down, thank you, but no thank you. But it sounds like in talking to Jack and kind of being his phone a friend through the process, that it's teed up to happen, but it certainly is not going to happen prior to the property closing. They've asked for a site plan, in essence, graphic representation of what we're doing and what we plan to do on the site. And I think it ultimately, for their purposes, is going to evolve into a amended plan development or a PD amendment for the property, because I think that property is currently zoned under like a PUD, which is a planned unit development, and it's site specific zoning and use, as opposed to falling under the regular or normal classifications of zoning that they would have in the county, such as various commercial, various residential, various agricultural. The property owner / developer kind of created their own defined zone district, and it's encompassed in the planned unit development. So anyway, I think I'm fairly comfortable that it's just a compulsory part of the exercise that we have to go through. It's not a fatal flaw or a gotcha. Because we have the ability, barring presence of alcohol sales and marijuana sales within a specific distance of the site, we have the ability to have a school in virtually any zone district in the state. That seemed consistent, Jack, with what we've discussed.
Yeah, and part of the reason for asking John to come talk about it is A, he's got a ton of experience, in doing these things, and B, I just wanted people to hear from somebody else, and that there is what happened was for the real short version is the city planner said. Again, as John was talking about, because you already had something done before, you don't have to do your site plan because it's already there. And then when they went to the supervisor to get it approved, they said, oh, wait a second, there never was really a site plan because you did this development as the mall and stuff was being done. So we'd really rather have you do the site plan. No suggestion that there's anything wrong. As we've all talked about, I'm almost certain they're going to require us to put a crosswalk or something, but it's all little stuff. The bottom line, though, is there is no way we're going to get it done. I mean, it'd be physically impossible to do it before you did the survey anyways. And then you got to do it. You got to get it to them, and then you have to have the public hearing. So, at best, you're talking 60 days or so. And we can't wait 60 days to close because of the financing and because the church has already bought another place and is all that stuff. So it does require a tad bit of a leap of faith or an assumption that everything's going to be okay. and I wanted you to be able to blame somebody else. I mean, I wanted you to be able to listen to somebody else rather than just me and saying, I am unbelievably comfortable that it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. We've got a long time before we actually have to use it, so there's no need to push the Jeffco. John and I talked about it last week. Again, we could try to do this, we try to do that, and just say, you know what, we're making more trouble for ourselves than it's worth. But like I said, I wanted everybody had to have the opportunity to talk to John and listen to him in case we had, significant concerns or anything. So.
Yeah, I'd just add one more layer of context. And my advice to Jack was that there's more risk in us taking it out of sequence than there is to just do it as part of our process as we develop our plan for improvements and work at the middle school site, because we still have a timely or a fairly time-consuming process of iterative design to go through it. So we might think we're only going to do something, submit that, and then have to redo it or create a different hiccup. And I also want to make sure we sort of establish all of our chips for negotiation should we need it, with a little more thought and a little more specific strategy.
I'm totally okay.
As it relates to the middle school building itself, I think after you all had a meeting a few weeks ago, Brittany and I exchanged a couple of brief emails, and then she said, just call me, this will be a lot easier. So then we had about probably a 40-minute conversation about what we were trying to accomplish with that building and how we might establish the program and set about to work with HCM to commence the design process. And I think that also sort of followed some of the advice I had shared with the board about, trying to keep you guys more in an oversight and governance role, have a liaison from the board participate in more of the nuts and bolts, the making of the sausage per se, but allow you all to enjoy the sausage when it's done, because you didn't have to go through the process of watching it be made. So about, I guess, 2 weeks ago now, I went and actually sat down with Adele and folks from FP at HCM's office and shared my notes, shared those thoughts from Brittany and my conversation, and really established, I think, our base programmatic needs for the building, mostly built around what that staffing composition in terms of FTE would look like, as well as the ultimate total enrollment goals, both for homeschool and for the middle school program. And we came up with a kind of a concept design that I actually received just today from HCM. Spent about an hour reviewing it and annotating and kind of coming up with some comments. But I feel like it is a strong enough representation that it really makes sense for us to now include staff. Brian and Amy and middle school, representation to provide some input and feedback. In essence, I think I should probably have my notes in front of me, but I'm trying really hard not to share it. So I'm afraid if I bring it up on my screen, I'm going to get bullied into sharing. I mean, requested to share it. But in essence, we're able to get on what I would consider to be sort of generous occupancy. So if we go back to the coaching you all received about kind of square foot per student, and trying to maximize that. In normal kind of public education for decades, there's been a rule of thumb of 30 square foot per student, 30 students to a class, 900 square foot classrooms. There are tens of thousands of, elementary schools and middle schools built across the country that fit within that model. That isn't representative of what you're trying to accomplish, nor necessarily meet the spirit of the Montessori model. And at the same time, we have limitations. We can't do, 200 square foot per student. We've only got so much building and so much money. But if you look at it from what I consider to be a generous allocation between 42 and 45 square foot per student. In some cases, we can get about 120 total kids in that building with the current layout. That's not doing any kind of building addition. That's not adding square footage internally. That's using the existing second floor and first floor floor plates and the four walls. If we were to get a little more aggressive and not go to 30, but maybe go to 35 square foot per student, we get as many as 185 students. So that sort of gives you the bracket. Currently, you know, I think the max occupancy is anticipated to be about 150 and a composition of to be determined middle school and homeschool students. Right now, being as generous as we can, 120 is no problem, and that's probably a 3-year or maybe even a 4-year horizon to get the middle school enrollment up that high. And then if we really had to squeeze it, because we're widely popular and we're buying more property elsewhere and we're going to create a new middle school, we can get up to 185. So that's sort of the big picture of where we sit. Trying to keep it as flexible, as open, and really reduce the amount of dollars we have to put in for reconfiguring. So instead of, for example, on the first floor, just gutting everything and starting over, we're trying to keep as much of the existing walls and demising in place where we can, keep ceilings in place where we can, and really maximize our dollars so that you're not, in essence, over investing in that property. So that's kind of it.
Hey, Jack, I asked John to kind of comment on what is going to be financing discussion. Do you think I could piggyback on that by going into that? So
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I sent over an email earlier today, and yes, Seth said 100 square foot per kid. When John was asking about our conversation, that conversation was after our strategic planning, and I took the guidance that you guys had given about 100 square foot is probably a pipe dream, so maybe 50 square feet or somewhere around there where we could say we're giving more square footage, but not 100 square feet. So that's where that came from. And I did promise John, he sent it over at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock today. And I promised him that I wouldn't send him an email in 10 minutes with all of my my lament, because I will say that a lot of the things that we had in those little bubbles we're giving up because of our commitment to the square footage, like some things. So, but I told John I would sleep on it and I would then send it out to everyone after the meeting so we weren't consumed by the details of that drawing. So we could get more stuff done. So I am exercising extreme restraint. But anyway, putting the design stuff aside and going to kind of the dollars, that email that I sent over, if it's okay to kind of walk through after our update on Friday at our officers meeting and Brian's input on budget, there's obviously, and there might be more that everyone else here has, but the main concerns were some of the requirements of the bank funding is that we have a certain debt to service ratio, which requires us to have a certain positive balance in our budget. That doesn't mean a positive budget at the end. It means only the operating budget. So any one-time expenditures like the HVAC system or hiring a teacher for COVID purposes or any of those things might fall under this definition of one-time expenditures, which don't count towards that budget analysis, that debt service ratio. So once you take out all of that, we just in the operating budget, we would need to have a positive balance of a certain amount of money. And in order to do that, else we would not meet our requirements and we would be in default of our agreement. So the bank agreed that they wouldn't even do that analysis or check our budget until June of 2021, so the end of the school year. But obviously, as we go through the school year, we have less and less flexibility to change and adjust our budget. And so because the enrollment is going up and down and we don't have a lot of certainty about what our budget would look like, there's concern about, doing this deal right now and taking out the money and going forward when we might be in January after we have enrollment count and realize we have to adjust our budget, and there's only really one or two ways that we can do that. And personally, and I know other people here are not willing to sacrifice our current MPA family and staff for that development at this time, right? We don't want to be put in that position where we've taken out this money and then we have to make a bad decision in the middle of the year because of budget problems. So knowing that was so that's obviously a main concern. So I went back to the finance people, the team, and I said, look, here's what's happening. We're not going to know what enrollment is until probably mid-October. Nobody probably feels very comfortable signing on the dotted line right now to take out the $3 million, knowing that consequence might be having to make those bigger decisions later. So I had forgotten about a second funding option, and DA Davidson reminded me of it, and I had Amy on the call as well, where we can do a structured drawdown. So it's a little bit, the interest rate is not locked in. It's only locked in at the day we draw down the money. But considering that there's not a lot of confidence that the interest rate will go up in the next year, it's probably not going to be any much different than what we currently have if we waited a year to draw the money. So we would just have to use 85% within 3 years and 100% within 5 years. If we didn't use that 100% of the $3 million in 5 years, we'd have to send a form to the IRS asking them to extend it, and that could be granted or not. So what that could look like is we could do the deal, refinance now, so that we get the benefit of the refinance of our current debt, and agree to the deal, but we don't have to take out any money until we feel more comfortable. We know what that enrollment would be in October, which is only 2 months or so away. With that said, DA Davidson sent over some numbers of what that would look like, because the offer from the bank it wasn't a formal, it was just another option of way to structure the same deal that they were offering us. So I asked them to put those numbers together, and I sent them over in that email, which shows the yearly payments, what that would look like. And that was assuming only $225,000 would be drawn in September of this year. And then we could reevaluate, we could draw more in January, we could do whatever structured draw we wanted. But I was concerned that might impact John and the work that they were doing. So I spoke with John today, and about what that might look like, or how that would impact him and the team. And I don't know, John, if you want to say whether basically you could get through March to the design phase and get through permitting it by March. And so you'd only need the cost for that amount to get through March. You don't have to take out the construction. Well, in March, we'll know much, much more than we do now. So, but John, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Our current schedule would be to be wrapped up with both design and permitting by early March, and be in a position to start construction at the middle school. And then if there's a possibility to coordinate some of the exterior work at the elementary school, we could do that as well, with the intent of wrapping both of those projects up by August, so fall of next year, for occupancy. So because of the way that schedule is laid out, our expenditures between, say, now and early March, late February, are going to be really for the design and permitting, all soft cost related things, which are generally low dollar. and we wouldn't then have to commit to the cost of the construction work. So the $1 million contracts, we would not have to commit to those until more along that line, that time. So we would have the opportunity, you would have the opportunity between your October count and when the big money is going to start to become committed to make any adjustments that you would need to within the context of the loan and financing and cash flow. And we can still look to identify some elements of the project scopes that are still somewhat negotiable, so that we could perhaps choose not to complete them. An example of that might be the entry vestibule at the elementary school. So that was a fundamental part of the original master plan scope. With the moving, and doing middle school over at the church, it sort of created a slightly higher priority there. And while there certainly could be improvements to the existing entry sequence, it's not a bad entry sequence. It doesn't create risk or create liability. So if it came down to it, that could be a portion of scope that we just wouldn't do, and we could reduce our total construction loan amount accordingly. And there may be others of those that we can discover along the way and work to define between the time that we start design and we get to the count day, and you all have to start making some of those difficult decisions.
And also the timeline about February, March is also after the enrollment period for Jeffco for next year is already underway. So it would give us some time to see how that looks for the following year.
Right. See what your early registrations are in spring for that following year.
Even though we know that changes so much, but considering the environment we're in right now, we'll have a lot more information about what has school looked like this year by January or February, and we might feel more confident in making some of these decisions. But so the overall bottom line is we can still move forward in a from my perspective, in a responsible way without delaying and causing inefficiencies and waste in the work that's already been done. The alternative would be to say, hey, we want to scrap the whole deal. We just want to do the refinancing, and we want to table everything for now. My concern is, we would expend different new costs for another whole closing process. That was $200,000 for this deal. If we do this structured drawdown like this, there aren't any more costs, but it does extend our financing decisions out for 3 years. And it's nothing says that we have to do the whole 3 million. If we say we don't want to draw down that money, we never want to take it. Well, we say we only want to do 1 million until year 3 when we know things look better, and we have the flexibility to do all of that. So I ran this by Amy. Amy, are you on? Yeah. Amy, do you want to comment on those discussions, or if I said anything wrong or something?
Sorry, I had to take myself off mute. Nope, you hit it right on the spot.
Do you have any concerns about that, Amy, or?
No, I think it really is the best way for us to go right now. Just not knowing what our enrollment's going to be. We're really not going to know what that is until middle of October. And I think, like Matt said, the bank would probably feel a lot better with that scenario.
Yeah, we're getting pushed back a little bit from the bank because they're, questioning enrollment. And obviously enrollment is up and down and up and down. And so every week we have a meeting with the bank, and every week it's something different. And so I think this is showing our fiscal responsibility the bank hasn't asked us to do this, but for us to do that, I think is kind of a good financial sense. The one thing I will say is Amy's gonna, although I was hoping this was gonna be over, Amy's gonna look into she's gonna have to redo the 5-year, but another concern was whether we have the capacity right now to push forward with the actual curriculum development besides the physical building, but the actual curriculum development of the middle school program. And understanding the challenges that are going on right now, put it out there about whether it needs to be pushed back a year. If that does, we need to give the bank a new 5-year projected enrollment, because we had projected enrollment coming in for middle school starting in August of 2021. And so that would be 20 students less for that first year, and it would just push out the numbers. I don't know what impact, if any, that will have, but that's kind of underway now. But if we could, there's not a rush there. If we can just if there's kind of consensus that we might consider this type of financial structure instead of what we were currently doing, we can go forward with that, and John can continue with the team working on that side. And there's not a lot of pressure like there was to get everything done. And then in January, if Brian, Amy, and everybody are like, hey, this is, grooving along, we're kind of adjusting and everything is kind of becoming a norm, then we can reevaluate our capacity to start looking and developing. And if we apply for that grant and we get it, there's some additional capacity there to do that, to develop and have someone help us. So anyway, thanks for sticking with me with that long-winded explanation. But John, do you have anything else?
The only thing I would say is that this isn't anything we need to advertise to Franzen Pittman or HCM or anybody externally. This is a appropriate internal budgeting strategy, and more or less right now a cash flow strategy. So I would just make sure that we don't let folks on the outside who might view it as either an opportunity to leverage or some sort of lack of commitment or other things that people do when they don't know how to handle information they don't necessarily need to have, that we just recognize this is our internal strategy.
Agree with that.
Then that's it.
All right, anything else for John before we let him get back to his evening? All right, thank you so much for coming, taking that. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Hope you're not on for too much longer.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
And to touch on what Brittany was talking about, clearly I think that's the right way to go. The concern that I had, and I know others did, and this is kind of overstating the obvious, but was doing everything possible to avoid a situation where we were swinging hammers over at the MPA North while we were laying off staff, and putting ourselves into a corner, where we couldn't avoid that. And this gives us that optionality, which I think is hugely important, again, for all the obvious reasons that we'll let everybody else ponder. So I think it's good. Do we need to make a motion on that, Brittany, or do you want to what do you think the best way to go forward?
I don't think there's nobody has to sign on any dotted lines in the next week or so. Unless there's some objection and we want to talk about it more, but if everyone kind of gives me a thumbs up that this is the way that we feel right now, that this is the good way, I can tell the bank and represent at our meeting on Thursday that's what we'd like to pursue, that drawdown option. And that also allows us, I forgot to mention it, we do still have the availability to access our reserve funds. They're not locked up because of this deal. I misunderstood originally that we wouldn't be able to touch them, but if we have some expenditures this year that are just unique to this year, we can reach into that without jeopardizing that financing.
And the other thing to note is if we revise the budget, at some point, the bank will want us to vote on that. So I don't know if that would require a special meeting. Just be aware.
They did want us to. They are looking for Thursday for us to have a budget, and I think that's on the agenda for us to, unless I'm wrong, for us to approve the amended budget.
Yeah, but if we have to revise the 5-year, I don't know if that would need to be approved.
Yeah, probably, but I think for now, on Thursday, they're gonna look for us to have decided something at least tonight.
Yep.
Would we pursue anything for that building then for the next year to utilize that space, or would it sit completely vacant would be the thought?
I don't know. I think that would be part of I mean, candidly, I think that would depend on what October looks like. I mean, since this change is not right now causing any delay, if January looks amazing and we're okay and we feel comfortable moving forward, you know, maybe we might not open in August, but maybe we could, I don't know. There would be some discussion about how fast we could push, but
yeah, if the numbers are good and things look like we can.
it's really not the numbers. I mean, that's one sense, but really it's the capacity to develop the middle school. It's just not, who are we going to tap to do that?
Right.
There's nobody right now that can handle that. And that's really the hold up. It's not so much the dollars, which right now we're still on track. We're going to be on track until at least March. It's really the capacity to get that developed.
But we could easily be in a situation where we would start utilizing it for homeschool at the end of next year and just push back to middle school for an extra year. All right, do we want to then talk about the budget that Amy sent around? And that's the next critical item, right?
We also need to discuss closing, or what budget comes first? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to hit that. I mean, I think basically that's just, I wanted just everybody to make sure that I wanted Amy to tell us that we were on track to do everything that we were supposed to be doing.
So the budget that I sent over is based on 360 FTE. And as Brian discussed earlier, we're down from that as of today. But I still think things are gonna ebb and flow. So I'm confident of the numbers. It's all just driven on our FTE. I mean, we've trimmed as much as we can trim. But if we can continue to find some of those revenues, whether it's remote for preschool, trying to figure out how to get our before and after care back up and running at some point. Those are things that continue to stay on the back of mine and Brian's minds as we meet every week. So I did lower the expenses of the church just because, I don't know that it's going to be used as we thought it was going to be used. So there wasn't a whole lot of things taken down. I've made it very clear to staff that I'm not buying a lot of materials right now. Once we know what our count is, we'll do that, which I know is always hard, but we're just trying to keep it simple. That's kind of my new saying to all of them is keep it simple. Let's do what we have to start remote. Once we get in person, then we'll determine, who's showing up, how things are running, and then we can start buying items. So I know that's a tough one for staff, and I thank all of them for being very flexible with me on that and not giving me too much of a hard time. But I think everybody understands, which is great. We've been trying to really keep the communication open about that and where we stand. So I don't know if there's any questions that you have. At the bottom of it, again, the bank wants to see us in a positive. And so there's a calculation down there for the debt service coverage, which they kind of run a model every time I'm giving them a new budget. So that'll be something that you'll see on the budgets going forward.
And just as a point of reference, for the whole deal, if we wanted to take out the whole 3 million now, they would require us to end the year at 1.2 debt service, and we're currently at this projected budget 1.23, so it's pretty close, and that's kind of uncomfortable. So, but we're not way off of that. So if that gives you some reference about what money might be available or whatever without having to do anything else to this budget, just as a point of reference.
Yep.
I move we adopt the revised budget that Amy sent to us for the 2020-2021 school year. Unless anyone has a question, I'm sorry, maybe I should have asked, maybe I should have waited longer.
Second.
Okay, Brittany Horseman
Yes.
and Brandon Smith,
Yes.
Jack Llewellyn,
You're muted, Jack.
that's a yes. All right, Beth McDonald,
Yes.
Lisa Myers, yes. Christina Grant,
Yes.
Robin Morrissey,
Yes.
Carmen Center,
Yes.
and Becky Springstead.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay, and then just to touch on what we're just talking about with Lisa, Amy, I got you, the email you sent over, but basically we're basically on track for what we need for the district on closing, right? Or at least we have everything in hand now of what we need to do.
Was that question for me, Jack? This is Amy.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that again?
After the email you sent tonight, and the one that you had sent to earlier with the bank, we now have we think we know the universe of what we need to do for closing from the district's point of view.
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure that we're getting those documents timely to the district so they can have a day or two to prepare for the wire transfer.
Right. Okay.
And the timing is gonna have to be, pretty good because the CFO Kathleen is leaving August 31st. She's retiring, so anything we can get to them before that is best.
Right. Okay. Anything else on MPA North? Oops. Okay. Then let's move on to handbook discussion and approval. Lisa.
So the handbook, the family handbook, has been updated. Miss Heather took that on. And it's basically our last year's handbook with revised dates and tuition, standard revisions. But the appendices will be the restart plans, the overall restart plan in the primary and the lower L and the upper L. So because this is adopting policy, the board typically approves this, and they need that formally so they can get it out to the family. So, anybody have any questions on the handbook? All right, we have 2 people have stepped out. Hang on, let me make sure we still have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we do. Okay, then I can make a motion. Hang on, I have to first note that these 2 people have stepped out. Okay. So I move we adopt the family handbook along with the restart plans as the appendix as presented to the board for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Okay. And then with that, Brittany has stepped out. We'll give that an abstain. Brandon Smith.
Yes.
And Jack Llewellyn has stepped out. And Beth McDonald.
Yes.
Okay. Lisa Myers, yes. Christina Grant.
Yes.
And Robin Morrissey.
Yes.
And Carmen Center.
Yes.
And Becky Springstead.
Yes.
Jack, you missed your vote. I made a motion and everything. All right, Jack's back and he votes yes. Okay. All right, that motion passes. I will get that handbook to Miss Heather. It will go up on the website and be ready to give out to families tomorrow.
All right. The next couple of things may be brief. I just wanted to make sure they were on the schedule. Is there anything that we need to talk about as far as follow-up from the strategic retreat that has not already been discussed in some way this evening?
Lisa, I don't have anything unless you do. I think most of the takeaways are lower priority at the moment, and things we're discussing tonight are the higher priority items.
I agree. I did the minutes and it brought back a few things, but nothing that needs to be decided tonight or shared with. We can maybe regroup after we start school, whatever that looks like.
Okay, I think the same thing's going to apply to committee reports. I mean, is there anything that SAC or anybody else wants to talk about with respect to committees? I think, you know, finance committee's already kind of de facto talked and stuff, but is there anything else that needs to be addressed?
No, we've decided to skip August for the SAC and then, yeah, just meet in September. Right.
Yep.
Nothing there.
All right. Monthly meeting attendance and updates. PTA, I'm assuming there was nothing this month?
Nothing yet.
Yeah.
There's a special meeting that they're doing for all PTAs for a health advisory meeting that was delayed from today, but nothing yet for our PTA.
Brandon, anything with Jeffco we need to be concerned about at this point? Brandon.
Can't hear you, Brandon.
What's that?
Oh.
They adjourned for the summer, so
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see anything from them until September.
And then I know Brittany's not back yet, but
No, she's back.
oh, there you are. Anything on JCSE you want to talk about? There you are. I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, JCSE didn't meet. We were hoping to plan a meeting just to kind of group up as charter schools and see what they're doing for their start plan, but we didn't want to have a meeting if it wasn't absolutely going to be productive and useful for principals. So we said no. So, but I am in touch with you know, we're getting updates on that end, and I'm passing them along as we get them if they're relevant.
Okay.
Curiosity, do we know if other charters are doing anything different in terms of restart?
I only know Woodrow Wilson, but that was as of like 10 days ago, is absolutely starting, but Brian has more up-to-date information than I do on that.
Most Jeffco charters, other than a handful or a few, are all starting remote first and September 8th. We all kind of agreed that with the unknown liability, the unknown, all the things you have to prep to get a school up and running. Yeah, most are starting just like us, especially the Montessori.
No.
Thank you.
Next month's board activities, is there anything we need to be? I didn't pull up the old calendar.
I would just add, I really think that's a great idea that Brian put out there about the grant. When I went to read the paperwork, I'm pretty sure we qualify.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I had some questions about was the performance data, but and that would be Beth and kind of Brian's wheelhouse, but I think we do. It's right in our, and I don't think it's going to be a extremely time intensive paperwork matter if we've got a lot of that already put together from the charter renewal and from the loan perspective. a lot of that work is already done, the budgeting and the projected enrollment and all that stuff for the middle school. So if there's, I wouldn't be able to dedicate a whole day to it, but if there's anybody that has experience with grant writing or knows somebody, we might want to loop them in to do that capacity. Robin?
And I've already put it on my calendar to be on at that training or available for that training. So.
Cool. Yeah, I'm already signed up as well.
Okay.
My dad has written many grants for many things, so I will loop him in on that.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we get to the consent agenda, I just want to, everybody who's been on the board for a while knows my interest in efficiency and stuff. And we've talked a lot about a lot of really important stuff. And I think from my perspective, the board is doing what the board should do, which is to give direction, be involved in helping to shape policy and direction, and giving Brian and Amy and Robin and everybody else on the staff the support they need, but letting them do what they do really well, and kind of staying out of the way. And so I'm really happy with that. And I could wax effusively on how great they've all been and how many great comments we're getting, and the amount of feedback that I know many of us get on, people who are at other schools who've heard nothing over the summer, and we've had so much, and I think that's a real testament to everybody who's not on the board, all of the staff and stuff. But what I do want to say is, please don't allow, if there's anybody on the board at any time who thinks that we need to talk about something more than we are, please don't let the time guesstimates on the agenda or anything else stop you from raising, if there's, a lot of this stuff is really important, and by God, none of us thought when we signed up to be on the board that we were ever going to be talking about life and death decisions, and so, it's important stuff. If anybody thinks we need to talk more than we have on something, please say something. If we need a special meeting, if you want to talk to me or Brittany or whoever else, separately, just please always know that's there and stuff. And I intentionally, again, was trying to avoid some of the little stuff this month that we could have talked about. Focus on the big stuff. Let's get us back in school, get the kids in school, and then we can worry about all the other stuff. So and I said that only before we get to the consent agenda, because immediately after the consent agenda is the motion to adjourn. So I just wanted to put that out there to everybody. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, on that note, I want to make sure we provided Mr. Bryan enough support or direction in this remote preschool option. I feel like we talked about it and then we kept going, and I want to make sure. I think that's really important, and it's here now. And so,
yes, thank you. I was just about ready to chime in. Let me just reiterate what I think I heard. Parents can pay their tuition but be in remote, unless we want to adopt a different payment scale. So right now, what we have is what we have. That's the easiest way to go. I don't know how it's going to sit with families. Really, I got to pay $400 a month for remote, or $600 a month for remote, depending on what age and where they're at. But that's one way to present it. So yeah, just help me with some guidelines, because I got 6 families waiting for an answer.
Me personally, go
I
ahead.
would also like to reiterate that we need to be kind to Jill and the other teachers that are taking on these remote schedules, and that we need to set a cap for, registration, as Brian has talked about. So that's what I would like to reiterate.
And I don't think I agree with Robin, but I don't think that we set those numbers. I think Brian and the staff set those numbers. They know what they can handle and what's appropriate, and that's what we have to go by. So I'm
Bill and I
happy
have talked. We got the cap. It fits in line with what other remote teachers are doing. I guess the question is are we really wanting to accept preschoolers into the mix?
Do you have a recommendation?
How does Jill feel about it?
I talked to Jill today, and I mean, clearly we are all flexible. There's a 15 kindergarten cap with kindergartners, as the district is talking about, but I think that she's feeling comfortable around the 15-ish range, and then maybe supporting about 10 preschoolers remotely, and that's what she has communicated to me. Granted, it depends on the decisions that we make, but that's what she has communicated to me.
I think if we're clear, well, Brian, do you have something? Sorry, Brandon,
I think my only hesitation, I'm gonna look at this from a communication standpoint, is from the beginning, we've said your only option is in person from preschool, your only option. And that's how my family based our decisions. I'm like, well, we can go or we cannot go. And now to say, never mind, we've got this preschool option, we'll only have 10 spots. While I want to accommodate every family possible, I also don't want to open up a can of worms that's going to cause more headache. But I also don't want to lose families if they definitely need a remote option for preschoolers. So I don't know if anyone has other thoughts.
Well,
I think, go ahead, Brian.
I just want to be clear that kinders by state,
yes,
right, they have the right, the family for kinders have the right to remote.
That all makes sense.
School's a whole different game.
Right.
And it really falls on whether we want to. We're doing remote just because for 2 weeks because we're going to include them, and then we go to in person, as you guys have voted on, that we will be in person on September 8th and 9th. So I agree. Whatever policy we want to stand by, we're flexible either way. Veronica and I have families waiting for answers. They bring up good questions, and it's for the board to kind of mill it around.
And in the spirit of Montessori, I want to accommodate everybody where they are. That's our whole philosophy, right? But I also have to step back and say, I just don't want to cause more headache, I guess would be my point.
See, I actually thought part of the reason that we had said no on remote is we just didn't think anybody would want remote with kindergarten.
For primary, preschool.
That was our thought too.
And so, now the fact that some people want it under these circumstances, okay,
yeah, that's how I feel about it too.
Well,
they want it.
If that's what they're after, then
Well, and like Brian said, we have a really positive experience that we can bring. We've got people that are very happy about MPA and want to be enrolled at MPA and want to ensure their students' future at MPA. And that's kind of a lot of the preschool parents, is they want to follow that track and be able to ensure that they have a placement at MPA, which is a really beautiful thing. So that's part of, I think, the preschool parent perspective is I can choice into this school.
Right. That makes sense. And again, I just wanted to look at it from a different.
Is part of the concern too, if we can only fit 10 kids, how to make that equitable? I mean, how do we divvy up 10 spots? Is that a secondary lottery or something? Because it doesn't sound like there's an opportunity to expand upon that if Jill's the only current remote teacher.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. There's capacity that we have to.
Yeah. So it may need to be something that is equitable to just ensure that all the families that may not have thought this was an option, and then it comes out as an option, have a chance to get in that lottery and be part.
Yeah, and that's gonna, that might change. You have 6 now, but after tomorrow night, the community meeting, if that message changed, that might, like Lisa said, put in flux some parents that are currently in person that said, oh, I didn't know that was an option. I'd rather be remote. And what value are we getting? You know, what's the amount of dollars that we're getting? Brian, that's kind of what you guys, I would think, is it worth the, you know what your front office is going to be like after the town hall meeting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lotteries are tricky, and I'd really like to stay out of that business if we could, because we're trying to juggle so many other things than to create a fairness or equity problem versus staying the course that we said earlier. Like I said, we have to provide remote to kinder families, but we don't have to at preschool. We could simply just say, if you're willing to pay the tuition, that is your slot, whether you're in person or remote. It's probably the easiest.
That's where my head is going, because if you're that adamant about wanting a remote option and that adamant about holding your spot, then that is your tuition.
That's your choice to flex in and out, and again, that spot is reserved in person or in remote.
Gives them the flexibility to come in and out of that classroom at those time slots. Then it makes that a little bit easier versus saying, oh, I want remote, but now I want in, but now there's not a spot for me. Is there going to be a spot for me next year? You know. I think, again, back to what Amy said, the simpler the better.
Yes, we need a whole boatload of simple right now.
I know there's problems every which way you make a choice, and sometimes we just have to make a choice. And if we're thinking about the kids and the school, not just the families, but the actual functioning of the school and the fiscal health of the school, getting us through this time, maybe that's the best option, and still leaves parents the choice of what they think is best for their family, even though it kind of lets people that have the money to burn save their spot, which is kind of not great, but we can't be perfect with every, you know, there's going to be a downside to every decision. So,
and you know, then again, if there's a lot of feedback after the town hall, and you know, Brian and Amy thinks that we need to look at something differently, we of course can do that. You know, I mean, we're not inflexible, obviously, but I think that you know, as tried as it is, simple is better right now for everybody. And this is a nice, simple policy. Go forward, and if we, you know, again, if we feel like we have to adjust, or Brian feels like we have to adjust, then we can discuss that.
I say we give it a try, because the town hall's tomorrow night. We can test drive it. Veronica and I will tomorrow. We'll let those families know. We'll see where it goes.
Okay.
Okay, and then my last thing is, in lieu of our delicious brunch that we normally prepare for the amazing staff, they did not want our potluck this year. I can't imagine why. I'm gonna go on Friday and bring a catered breakfast up to them. So if anyone is around and wants to help or just wants to pitch in, those of you who reached out to me, great, thank you. We're doing that on Friday from the board. So
is that 8 o'clock in the morning?
At 7:30.
Oh,
yeah,
that's okay. Okay, I'm happy to help pick up and drop off and stuff. I can perfectly do that early.
Thank you. I'll reach out to you. I'm just going to 3 places, so with my kiddos.
No, we can divide that up. Yeah, I know.
But this was the easiest, like, self-contained, individually wrapped that didn't cost $14 a person thing I could come up with. But I think it's going to be delicious, and there's a lot of love behind it. So we're very grateful.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Appreciate board supporting staff.
I will know on Friday, Brandon. Sorry. I'll text you.
All right, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda for the June 16th, July 7th, August 7th, and board strategic retreat minutes. Actually, we can't do officers.
You can't do it with the August 7th one, right?
I move we approve the June 16th, July 7th, and board strategic retreat minutes.
Second.
All right. Brittany Horston.
Yes.
And Brandon Smith.
Yes.
And Jack Glenn.
Yes.
And Beth McDonald.
Yes.
And Lisa Myers. Yes. Christina Grant.
Yes.
Robin Morrissey.
Yes.
Carmen Center.
Yes.
And Becky Springster.
Yes.
All right. I now move we approve the August 7th officers meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay. And that would be Brittany Horstman.
Yes.
And Jack Llewellyn.
Yes.
And Christina, you were absent.
Same.
And Lisa Myers, yes. Okay.
Christina, you're up.
Oh, I move that we adjourn.
Adjourned at 8:28.
Second. We need a second.
I think the second everyone has to leave.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Good night.